What if the one person everyone ignores noticed something that could change a billionaire's fate forever? A single dad janitor, a crowded school event, and a moment no one saw coming. Caleb Harris, 46, navigated the polished corridors of St. Augustine's Academy with a quiet precision of a man who'd mastered invisibility. The elite private school in Boston was a citadel of wealth, its halls lined with oil portraits of benefactors, mahogany panels, and brass plaques gleaming with the names of donors whose fortunes dwarfed Caleb's existence. His navy blue janitor's uniform, frayed at the cuffs and slightly too large, marked him as an outsider in this world of tailored suits and designer scarves. His name tag, reading C. Harris, was a footnote no one read. To the students, he was the man who swept up their spilled smoothies. To the teachers, a shadow who fixed leaky faucets. To the parents, he was nothing, a ghost blending into the ivy-clad walls. But Caleb carried a life woven with depth and loss. His broad shoulders and calloused hands spoke of a past as a carpenter, crafting furniture with his wife, Lena, in a small workshop filled with sawdust and dreams. 15 years ago, their world had been alive with possibility. Lena's sketches of tables and chairs were works of art, her laughter a melody that warmed their modest home in Dorchester. They'd planned to open a furniture store, each piece a story of their love. But one spring evening, everything shattered. Lena collapsed in their kitchen, clutching her temple, her face drained of color. Paramedics called it exhaustion. The ER doctor prescribed fluids, blaming stress from their long hours. She just needs rest, they assured Caleb as Lena's words slurred and her eyes fluttered. He trusted them, holding her hand, whispering reassurances. By the time a neurologist ordered a CT scan, it was too late. A brain aneurysm, undiagnosed, untreated, stole her in hours, leaving Caleb with their 2-year-old daughter, Mia, and a grief that settled like lead in his chest. Now, Caleb's world orbited around Mia, his 14-year-old daughter. She had Lena's almond-shaped eyes, her radiant smile, and a laugh that could pierce even his darkest days. Mia attended a public school across town. St. Augustine's $50,000 a year tuition was a fantasy on Caleb's $42,000 salary. Each morning, he rose at 5 a.m., brewing coffee in a chipped mug Lena had painted with sunflowers. He packed Mia's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, a granola bar, and a note in his careful handwriting. "You're my light, kiddo. Keep shining." At night, he returned to their cramped apartment, where Mia greeted him with a hug and stories of her day, her latest poem, a history project, a new sketch. Her dreams of becoming an artist or writer filled their home with color, a lifeline against the gray of their reality. Caleb's days at St. Augustine's were a grind of routine. He arrived before dawn, checking boilers, restocking restrooms, and scrubbing classrooms until they gleamed. He took pride in the small things, a spotless hallway, a repaired lock, a window that sparkled in the morning light. But no one noticed. Students rushed past, their sneakers squeaking on his polished floors, leaving gum wrappers in their wake. Teachers offered distracted nods, their minds on lesson plans or tenure battles. Parents, draped in cashmere and confidence, didn't even glance his way. Caleb didn't resent them. He'd learned to live in the margins, to find power in being unseen. But he saw everything, a scuff on the baseboard, a flicker in a fluorescent bulb, the subtle tremor in a hand. It was a vigilance born of tragedy, a need to catch what others missed, because he knew the cost of looking away. Caleb was a man of quiet resilience, his life stitched together by small, deliberate acts. He kept a faded photo in his wallet, Lena holding a giggling Mia, both bathed in sunlight from a picnic long ago. During breaks, he'd sit in the boiler room, eating a turkey sandwich while studying plumbing manuals, hoping a certification might mean a raise, a better future for Mia. Every overtime shift, every extra hour, went into a savings account labeled Mia's college fund, a dream that felt like chasing the horizon. He wanted Mia to have the opportunities he and Lena never had, to escape the weight of their losses and build a life of her own. Mia was his heart. A straight-A student, she filled notebooks with poems about constellations, forests, and forgotten heroes. Her sketches, vivid landscapes, faces brimming with unspoken stories, echoed Lena's artistry, each line a thread to the mother she barely remembered. But Mia carried that loss, too. Caleb saw it in her quiet moments, when her smile faded and her eyes drifted to the photo of Lena on their mantel, a black and white portrait from their wedding day. He tried to be both parents, cooking her favorite spaghetti with homemade sauce, helping with algebra, listening to her read her poetry aloud. But he often felt inadequate, haunted by the fear that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't fill the void Lena left. When Mia hugged him at the end of a long day, her arms tight around his neck, he felt whole again, if only for a moment. Caleb's grief was a constant undercurrent, a shadow that followed him through the halls of St. Augustine's. He saw Lena everywhere, in Mia's gestures, in the autumn leaves that fell outside his window, in the quiet moments when the world slowed. He replayed that spring evening endlessly, blaming himself for not pushing harder, for trusting the doctors who dismissed Lena's headache, her fatigue, her trembling hands. That guilt sharpened his senses, made him notice details others ignored. A student's nervous tick, a teacher's strained voice, a parent's hurried glance. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a man who'd learned to see what others overlooked, because he'd paid the ultimate price for blindness. But Caleb wasn't defined only by loss. He had a dry humor, a knack for fixing things, whether a broken chair or a kid's bicycle in the neighborhood. He'd taught Mia how to ride a bike, how to change a tire, how to stand up for herself. He listened to old jazz records on a thrift store turntable, the notes of Coltrane and Davis filling their apartment with warmth. He was a man who kept going, not because he wanted to, but because Mia needed him to. And in that persistence, he found a quiet strength, a resolve to never let another life slip through the cracks. Ethan Ward, 52, was a titan in a world that worshipped power. As CEO of Ward Tech, a global leader in AI and cybersecurity, he'd built an empire that protected governments, corporations, and banks from digital threats. His face graced the covers of Forbes, Wired, and Time, his name synonymous with innovation and control. Tall and lean, with piercing blue eyes and silver hair that caught the light, Ethan moved through life with the confidence of a man who'd never been doubted. His tailored suits, crafted in Milan, cost more than Caleb's annual rent. His watches, each a masterpiece of Swiss engineering, gleamed with understated wealth. His speeches were masterclasses in charisma, his decisions ruthless but brilliant. He'd outmaneuvered competitors, charmed investors, and amassed a fortune that made him untouchable. Vanity Fair called him Boston's Iron King, and he wore the title like armor. But beneath the polish, Ethan was hollow. 2 divorces had left him with a son, James, now 27, who hadn't spoken to him in 3 years. Their last conversation ending in a slammed door and words neither could take back. His Back Bay penthouse, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and marble floors, was a showcase of success, but not a home. His private jet, his art collection, his rare wines, they were trophies, not comforts. Ethan filled his days with board meetings, global summits, and late-night strategy sessions, chasing a legacy that always felt just out of reach. Lately, he'd noticed cracks in his armor, headaches that lingered past his morning espresso, a faint tremor in his left hand he dismissed as fatigue, a dizziness he blamed on 80-hour workweeks. He ignored them. Ethan Ward didn't have time for weakness. His empire demanded perfection, and he delivered, no matter the cost. When St. Augustine's invited him to speak at their annual charity gala, Ethan saw it as another stage to command. The school's board coveted his donation, hoping to fund a new science wing with his name on it. Parents wanted his influence for their children's futures. Teachers hoped for his endorsement of their pet projects. Ethan arrived prepared to dazzle, his assistant, Claire, at his side with her ever-present tablet, his charm dialed to 11. He was the man who had everything, until the moment he didn't. October 12th was a perfect Boston autumn day. The sky a brilliant blue, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. St. Augustine's Gymnasium had been transformed into a glittering venue for the annual charity gala, a fundraiser for scholarships that Caleb suspected padded the school's endowment more than its students' futures. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting prisms of light across tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played Bach, their notes weaving through the hum of conversation. The air was thick with wealth. Parents in bespoke suits and glittering jewelry, teachers in their finest dresses, board members with practiced smiles. The scent of roasted lamb, truffle risotto, and red wine mingled with expensive perfume, creating a heady atmosphere of privilege and ambition. Caleb worked the edges of the event, emptying trash cans, wiping spills, and mopping stray footprints from the polished wood floor. His bucket rattled faintly, a quiet counterpoint to the quartet strings. He overheard snippets of conversation, parents boasting about their children's Ivy League applications, teachers pitching curriculum changes, board members whispering about tax write-offs and naming rights. He tuned them out, focusing on a sticky patch near the entrance, his mop gliding in steady arcs. The work was meditative, a way to keep his mind from wandering to Lena, to the life they'd lost. Ethan Ward's arrival caused a seismic shift. He strode in, flanked by Claire and a board member, Mrs. Langley, his navy suit catching the light like polished steel. Parents whispered, students craned their necks, and the headmaster, Dr. Ellison, rushed to greet him, his handshake lingering. Ethan's presence was electric, his smile practiced but magnetic. Caleb glanced up, noting the way Ethan's left hand twitched as he adjusted his cufflinks, the brief pause before his smile snapped into place, the slight sheen of sweat on his brow. It was a fleeting observation, one Caleb pushed aside as he returned to his work, scrubbing a scuff mark near the bleachers. The gala began with speeches. Dr. Ellison took the stage, his voice smooth but rehearsed, speaking of legacy, community impact, and shaping the next generation. Caleb, stationed near the back, swapped out a trash bag, his movements automatic. The crowd clapped politely, their attention drifting, their wine glasses glinting in the chandelier light. Then Ethan stepped up. His presence was commanding, his voice carrying the weight of authority. He spoke of innovation, of technology as a force for good, of giving back to institutions like St. Augustine's that shaped young minds. The crowd leaned in, captivated, their applause thunderous. Caleb barely listened, his focus on a stubborn stain, his mop moving in steady circles. 20 minutes into Ethan's speech, his voice faltered. His hand gripped the podium, knuckles white, his words stumbling. We must invest in the future of... A murmur ran through the crowd. He tried to continue, his voice slurring slightly, the next generation, before his body swayed. Then he collapsed, his tall frame hitting the stage with a sickening thud. Gasps erupted. Parents stood, knocking over chairs. Teachers shouted, hands over mouths. Dr. Ellison rushed forward, his voice trembling. Please, everyone, stay calm. Stay seated. Caleb froze, the mop handle cold in his hands. He saw it, the tremor in Ethan's left hand as he lay on the stage, the uneven rise of his chest, the glazed flicker in his eyes as he tried to sit up. It was Lena, replayed in vivid, agonizing detail, her trembling fingers reaching for a glass of water, her slurred words dismissing her headache, the moment Caleb had trusted the doctors, who said it was nothing. His heart pounded, his breath shallow, memories crashing like a tidal wave. He dropped the mop, the bucket clattering. Paramedics pushed through the crowd, their red bags clattering against the floor. The lead paramedic, Ryan, a young man with sharp eyes and a clipboard, knelt beside Ethan, checking his pulse and blood pressure. His partner, Sarah, hooked up a portable monitor. Dehydration, Ryan announced, his tone calm but firm. Maybe low blood sugar or stress. Blood pressure's low but stable. We'll get him fluids and monitor him. Sarah attached in 4, her movements swift. The crowd exhaled, relieved. Ethan, groggy but conscious, managed a weak nod as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Dr. Ellison addressed the room, his voice steadying. Mr. Ward is in good hands. Let's continue the evening. The quartet will resume shortly. But Caleb's gut churned. He saw Lena's face, heard her voice. I'm just tired, Caleb, it's nothing. His hand shook, sweat beading on his brow. He stepped forward, his voice low but steady, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. You need to check his brain. Order a CT scan. Now. The room stilled. Heads turned. Ryan frowned, his clipboard lowering. Sir, we've assessed him. It's under control. He's stable. Caleb's throat tightened. He felt the weight of every eye, the janitor daring to speak. A teacher, Ms. Carter, whispered to another, "Who does he think he is?" A parent, Mrs. Pembroke, scoffed. The janitor? Ethan, barely coherent, waved a hand, muttering, "I'm fine, let's go." Claire, his assistant, shot Caleb a dismissive glance, her lips pursed, her fingers already typing on her tablet. But Caleb didn't budge. His voice cracked, raw with memory. "My wife had the same symptoms, tremors, slurring, dizziness. They said it was nothing. She died that night. A brain aneurysm. Please, don't make the same mistake." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Mrs. Langley, the board member, rolled her eyes, whispering to Dr. Ellison, "He's not a doctor. This is ridiculous." Mrs. Pembroke muttered, "This is embarrassing. He's delaying everything." Ryan exchanged a glance with Sarah, skepticism clear in their eyes. Dr. Ellison approached, his face tight, his voice low but sharp. "Mr. Harris, please. Let the professionals handle this. You're causing a scene." Caleb's hands trembled, but his voice held firm, rising now urgent. "I've seen this before. I lost her because no one listened. I'm begging you, don't let it happen again." He locked eyes with Ryan, willing him to understand, his chest heaving with the weight of memory and fear. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. Ryan hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who was slipping in and out of coherence, his hand still trembling faintly. Sarah raised an eyebrow, but Ryan's jaw tightened. Something in Caleb's desperation broke through. He nodded, reluctantly. "All right, we'll take him to Mass General for a full workup, including a CT scan, just to be safe." Sarah's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. The crowd parted as the paramedics wheeled Ethan out, Claire trailing, her phone buzzing with urgent calls. Caleb stood rooted, his heart racing, the room's whispers fading into a dull roar. He felt exposed, foolish, but the certainty in his gut wouldn't let him back down. Caleb stayed late, unable to leave until he knew. He sat in the break room, his coffee cold, the fluorescent light flickering above. Mia had texted at 8:30 p.m., worried. "Dad, you okay? Call me." He'd replied with a quick, "I'm fine, kiddo. Home soon." The gala continued, the mood forced but festive, the quartet playing Mozart now, the clink of wine glasses filling the air. No one mentioned Caleb's outburst. He replayed the moment in his mind, doubting himself. What if he was wrong? What if he'd humiliated himself, risked his job, for nothing? He stared at his hands, calloused and steady, and thought of Lena, of the moment he'd failed her. At 9:47 p.m., his phone rang, the sound jarring in the quiet room. It was Dr. Steve from Massachusetts General Hospital. "Mr. Harris? You were at the St. Augustine's gala, right? You told the paramedics to check Ethan Ward's brain." Caleb's stomach dropped, his voice barely a whisper. "Yeah. Is he okay?" Dr. Steve's voice was steady but warm, tinged with awe. "You saved his life. We found an early-stage brain aneurysm, small but critical. It was pressing on a nerve, causing the symptoms you saw. If it had ruptured, he'd have had days, maybe hours. He's stable now, and we're scheduling surgery for tomorrow." "You were right." Caleb sank into a chair, tears stinging his eyes. Relief and grief collided, memories of Lena flooding back. Her smile as she sketched, her voice singing to Mia, the moment he'd lost her. He wasn't too late this time. He whispered, "Thank you," his voice breaking, and hung up. He pressed his hands to his face, sobs shaking his shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of purpose, a sense that he'd honored Lena's memory, that he'd done what he couldn't do for her. The next morning, Ethan Ward held a press conference from his hospital room, broadcast live on every major network. Reporters packed the screen, expecting a statement about his health scare. Instead, Ethan sat up in his hospital bed, his arm in a sling from the floor, his eyes bright with gratitude. "I'm alive today because of a man most of you don't know," he said, his voice clear and steady. Caleb Harris, a janitor at St. Augustine's, saw what no one else did. Not my doctors, not my staff, not even me. He fought to be heard when everyone dismissed him. He's not just a hero. He's the reason I'm here. The room fell silent. Cameras flashed, capturing Ethan's intensity. Caleb, watching from home with Mia, felt his chest tighten. Mia grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered, "you're amazing." She buried her face in his shoulder, her sobs a mix of pride and relief. Caleb held her, his own tears falling, the weight of years lifting just a little. The news anchor's voice cut through, calling Caleb the unlikely hero who changed everything. And for the first time, Caleb didn't feel invisible. But the twist went deeper. That afternoon, Claire called Caleb, her tone softer, almost reverent. "Mr. Ward wants to meet you. Tomorrow, at Ward Tech's headquarters. Can you make it?" Caleb hesitated, his mind racing. Why him? But he agreed, his voice steady despite the nerves. The next day, he arrived at Ward Tech's glass and steel campus, his work boots scuffing the polished lobby floor. He felt out of place, his flannel shirt and jeans stark against the sleek surroundings, the receptionist's curious glance following him. Ethan met him in a quiet office, his arms still in a sling, his face less polished but more human, his blue eyes searching. "I've spent my life surrounded by experts," Ethan said, his voice raw, almost confessional. "None of them saw what you did. You didn't just save my life, you made me see how blind I've been." He paused, leaning forward. "I looked into your story, Caleb. I know about Lena, about Mia, about the life you've built from nothing. You're not invisible to me." Ethan revealed his plan. He'd created the Lena Harris Scholarship Fund at St. Augustine's, fully funded to ensure kids from working-class families could attend, starting with 5 students next fall. But he went further. "I want you at Ward Tech," he said. "Not as a janitor, as a facilities manager for our Boston campus. You'd oversee operations, safety, everything. The salary's $90,000, with benefits and stock options. You've got the eye for detail, the grit, the heart. I need people like you." Caleb blinked, stunned, his voice catching. "I'm not. I'm just a janitor." Ethan shook his head, a faint smile breaking through. "You're the man who saw what I couldn't. You're the man who stood up when everyone else looked away. Say yes." Caleb thought of Mia, of Lena's dreams, of the years he'd felt like a ghost. He thought of the plumbing manuals on his nightstand, the college fund that never grew fast enough, the weight of being unseen. He nodded, his voice steady. "Yes." But Ethan wasn't done. He leaned forward, his voice quieter now. "There's something else. I've been a lousy father. My son, James, hasn't spoken to me in years, and I don't blame him. I was too busy building an empire to see him. You reminded me what matters. I'm going to fix that, starting now." Caleb saw the pain in Ethan's eyes, a mirror of his own. He nodded, not knowing what to say, but feeling a connection. A man who'd lost, a man who'd learned to see. Weeks later, Caleb stood in St. Augustine's hallway, his last day as a janitor. The school had changed. Parents nodded respectfully, some stopping to shake his hand, their eyes lingering with something like awe. Teachers called him Caleb, asking about Mia, about his new job. Students smiled as they passed, one leaving a note on his cart. "Thanks for being awesome, Mr. Harris." The board, chastened by the media frenzy, had offered a raise and a public apology. But Caleb was ready for more. He'd start at Ward Tech the following Monday, overseeing a team of 20, his $90,000 salary a lifeline for Mia's future. He'd enrolled in a night course for his plumbing certification, determined to prove he was more than his past, that he could build something new. At home, Mia waited with a surprise. She'd framed one of her sketches, a portrait of Caleb and Lena, based on the photo in his wallet, their faces alive with love, a sunflower tucked into Lena's hair. "You're not invisible, Dad," she said, her voice thick with pride. "You never were." She handed him a poem she'd written, titled "The Man Who Saw." It described a quiet hero, unnoticed but unyielding, whose heart carried the weight of loss and the strength to save. Each line was a brushstroke, painting Caleb as the father she adored, the man who'd turned pain into purpose. Caleb read it, tears blurring the words, and pulled Mia into a hug. "You're my hero, too," he whispered, his voice breaking. Mia's school had changed, too. The Lena Harris Scholarship Fund had selected its first recipients, including Mia, who'd been offered a spot at St. Augustine's for her freshman year. Caleb had hesitated. Mia loved her public school, her friends, but she'd insisted, her eyes bright. "It's what Mom would have wanted," she said, "and I want to make you both proud." Caleb felt Lena's presence in her words, a warmth that softened the ache in his chest. Ethan, too, was transforming. He'd reached out to his son, James, sending a letter that began, "I've been wrong. I want to make it right." James hadn't responded yet, but Ethan was patient, determined to rebuild what he'd broken. He restructured WardTech, launching an initiative called The Unseen, a program to empower overlooked employees, janitors, security guards, administrative staff. He spoke at a company-wide meeting, his voice steady, his eyes fierce. "Caleb Harris taught me to see. We're done ignoring the people who keep this company alive. From now on, we listen, we value, we change." He invited Caleb to the meeting, introducing him to the staff as the man who changed everything. The applause was deafening, and Caleb, standing awkwardly in his new blazer, felt the weight of being seen. He glanced at Mia in the audience, her smile brighter than the sun, and knew he'd done something right. On a quiet Sunday, Caleb and Mia visited Lena's grave, a small headstone in a cemetery lined with ancient oaks. The air was crisp, the leaves a riot of gold and crimson. Caleb placed Mia's sketch of their dream table beside the headstone, a tribute to the life he and Lena had planned. Mia laid a sunflower, Lena's favorite, next to it, her fingers lingering. "I did it, Lena," Caleb whispered, his voice breaking. "I saw it this time. I made it right." Mia squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with tears and pride. "She's proud of you, Dad," she said. "I know she is." As they walked away, the autumn leaves swirled around them, catching the fading light. Caleb wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was a father, a survivor, a man who'd turned his pain into purpose. He'd saved a life, changed an empire, and shown the world that even the invisible could shine. The grief for Lena would always be there, a quiet ache in his heart, but now it was woven with hope, with pride, with the certainty that he and Mia would never be unseen again. They faced the future together, their steps steady, their hearts full, knowing they carried Lena's love into every tomorrow.